Hello, this is Eric Miscoll, and this is the Eric Miscoll Show. We're here at IPC Apex in San Diego. Invited some guests here to join us for a discussion. The general discussion here is going to be, women in electronics. There's a lot has been done about this, but we're going to kind of take our spin.
Figure out what else needs to be.
Figure out what else needs to be done. So let me start by introducing Julie Silk with
Keysight Technologies.
Keysight Technologies. Sorry about that. Sherry Stepp with Kyzen. There's another affiliation, but we'll stick with Kyzen on this one.
Kyzen.
And as always, the beautiful Phil Stoten at the end down here. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
by context, and we were talking about this a little before, we look around at the show floor here, and we see mostly guys, right? I mean, it's still, and you made the interesting comment that it's even, come on upstairs to the technical conferences, right? I mean, that it's even women are less represented up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm also seeing, though, is that it seems like there's more young women than there used to be. So I'm so excited by that. So I think that hopefully the pipeline has been building so that more young women are going into the sciences, going into technology, and then going into electronics manufacturing, which isn't that common of a place to go or to even know that it exists. So I think there's been more encouragement in that area, and hopefully there'll be even more coming up.
Yeah. And that's actually, I've noticed not just young women, but a younger crowd even here, so it's just younger too, because, and at the same time, I'm talking to some people who are retiring, after
There's
years,
a lot.
and so that little
About time too.
about
Time too. Bring on that silver tsunami. We need to get
We
some of those
do,
people
right?
out of the way. But it's interesting. You look around here, and actually, I hadn't thought of that because I looked around and I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women, and I can probably see 100 people. So that's a very low percentage. But actually, if you start to crank through the generations, if you look at the younger people, the proportion of women is higher. I read last week that there were finally more women in the workplace in the US than there are men, so you're ahead on that one.
overall, right?
I'm working with a Silicon Valley startup in the manufacturing space. They're a platform company that have manufacturing partners and then supply chain managers. They are 200 people. They're 48% female.
Okay.
As a startup, and that's
That is
wonderful to
wonderful.
see. So
Yes.
there are pockets of progress, but then I come back to a show like this and I think, oh my goodness, grey-haired, middle-aged men. There are way too many of us.
There are.
How do we?
Well, how do you assess kind of let's start there maybe. What's your assessment of kind of how does the industry stand right now in regards to attracting, promoting, encouraging, women in electronics?
I think the group that we have, I think that companies are starting to realize the value of having a woman in a position of any value. I mean, as far as moving them up through the ranks. I know, in my field, I'm primarily marketing. However, I work with salespeople, I work with engineers, I work with a lot of technical people. And the promotion of people has been very... I've seen it just in the last 2 or 3 years. You see on LinkedIn, so-and-so's been promoted to this position, so-and-so's been promoted to this position, this person has started at this company. And, it's interesting, you were talking about in the Silicon Valley that you're working with a company that's 48% women. I had dinner last night at a function and sat with a couple of companies that are EMS, and one of them it's a male-owned company, but he said he's surrounded by women. That almost everybody that works for him is a woman. Yeah. So that was actually very exciting and encouraging.
And I think that the environment, as far as respect for women and that sort of thing, is way better than back when I started. It's actually very good now, and I think we're all watching out for each other, especially us women who've been around for a while. We need to watch out for the younger ones, but I think even our male partners are doing a good job of watching out, for the most part, and encouraging and supporting equally males and females, and it's really a lot based on your own merits and your own technical capabilities, as it should be. And I think that's been true for a long time in the engineering fields, but it's still hard to get the pool going, because even in college there's certain fields that have a lower percentage, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on.
Right.
Is that just generation by generation? It takes time for this. It takes time for the things you're doing now to have an impact? Are you frustrated by the
so.
speed things are going, or are you
Well,
relatively happy?
I've been working for years, like over 20 years, on encouraging 7th and 8th grade girls to pursue math and science careers. So I think the needle's pushed over in some fields, but not in others. And so I'm frustrated by some of those, like electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, for instance. The percentages in college are still really low,
Yeah.
and that's regrettable. And coding, which I think women are very good at, and that you want that kind of, for all those fields, you want that kind of diversity in the workplace for all those different ideas.
Yeah.
There was somebody gave an example of the car companies and the airbags, and it turns out that the way they were designed, it was hurting women because they're smaller, because they didn't imagine that somebody would be shorter
Yeah.
and that would actually be driving a car.
Yeah.
So
Imagine
it just
that.
was males
Yeah.
designing, and they looked at their own selves and figured out where things should go, and didn't realize that,
Yeah.
that it was
Yeah.
inappropriate. So a diverse workforce is always beneficial.
Yeah.
So, you touched on it, though, that your male colleagues are looking out, too. So I guess begs the
Yeah.
question, how many are still tone deaf to the issue in the industry? How much of it is, are the men doing enough?
I think the silver tsunami is probably not as sensitive as the younger generations coming up, because they have been presented with this women are people too kind of attitude, because mothers like us have taught our sons and our friends, our sons' friends or children's friends, that women can be very successful in whatever they choose to do. And I know that in chemistry, you were talking about the sciences and stuff, there's a lot of women getting their chemistry degrees. We see that at Kyzen, bright young women that are moving into formulation, and they're being mentored by the men in our company that have traditionally done the formulating. So it's exciting to see, when we introduce a product that was formulated by one of our women chemists. And so, we have chemies, and we have chemists, and we have mechanical engineers, and just within our company, the rise of them. But to another point, to try to fill that pipeline, women in particular need to be more vocal and be more nurturing and be more, and which is what we do, right? So we need to be more welcoming and identify these different fields for them that they may not be aware of. When I grew up, I wanted to be the third baseman for the Atlanta Braves. Of course, that didn't happen, and I don't think it's happened since or yet. But I at that age, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade in grade school, I had no boundaries. I wasn't given boundaries until I got older, and then I decided I was going to be a pilot, and that didn't work out for me either.
You guys need a female president. That's what you
We
need.
do.
I think so.
Can you
I
fix
haven't.
that?
I haven't.
Do you want to run for that?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
Too many
Not even for a
skeletons, is that it?
That too. Yeah.
No, I think it's, and the reason I mention that is I was talking to someone else about this earlier, and they were saying it's not just the roles that you're told later on as you go through college that you can do. It's when you're young and you're looking at other people doing jobs, and you naturally look at people like yourselves doing those jobs and think you can do them. So if you see that there is a woman president, or you see there is a woman CEO in your company, or you see the head of engineering in your company, in college or whatever is a female, then you naturally think you can do that, and you naturally are attracted to that. That's why men grow up wanting to be firemen or pilots or cowboys, because they watch the TV and that's what men do.
It's the model.
And I think the women who have gotten there, I think the like Julie's been doing, she's going in and she's trying to show these girls that these sciences are available to them, and I think that if the women that are successful in this industry in particular, but industry that is male dominated in general, would take that time to go in, mentor, show these girls how much fun they can have and how they can succeed in a male dominated, that I think we'll catch up quite quickly.
Yeah. But it does take a while for those enough role models, and I think with more women have been in the workplace in my generation than the ones before, and more in the generations after me than the ones than even mine. So I think all of those examples of, especially like in the household, of sharing responsibilities and whose career takes dominance or whatever, and who does more in the household, all of that needs to be equal, so that each has the same kind of energy to put into their career.
Yeah.
Men can have it all. I fully support the fact that they can be, be a husband and be a family man and have a career. I think that should be more, out there.
More supported.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely
Way to
agree.
take a stance there, Sherry.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking a stance, I was curious whether you felt that some of these larger non-industry issues, like the Me Too thing, whether you think that's had an impact on the workplace, the environment for women within the technical world, or are we off on a tangent there?
I see Sherry biting her tongue already.
Or should you bite your tongue?
So I'll start.
Please.
How's that? So I think, like in my particular company, women have been very well supported, and that kind of behavior has not been tolerated. So I'm very proud about that. And I was diverted once by talking to somebody, a guy who says, not in my company, who said, I don't even know what to say now. It's like, and I realized it astounds me that he's gone through his whole life not controlling what he says in a situation.
Now
Whereas
he has
as a
to control it, he
female or
can't do it.
as a man of color, you do control what you say to some extent whenever you're in a conversation, so that there are things I'm not going to say to you because it would be inappropriate. And I think many white men have never experienced that. So it's just treating people with respect.
And they absolutely should.
That's all. Yeah.
I have a very strong opinion about the hashtag #MeToo. However, I will say this, that while it has brought issues that have not been thought about before or not given enough credence to the forefront, I think that the movement as a whole and somewhat has damaged the ability for actual victims to be seen because of some of the frivolity of some of the accusations and some of the people who have taken on that hashtag #MeToo. I think that that victims of that sort of thing think of themselves more of survivors rather than victims, and I think that the victim part is being too focused upon.
Yeah.
That I think they need to look at it as, okay, here's how we get past it, but I'm not a victim. I am a survivor.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
No, but as you're talking about the generational differences and how that is getting better, and it's really that way with most social issues, right? Whether it be, racial relationships, whether it be acceptance of gay and lesbians, right? I mean, that gets every generation. The younger ones are as you were saying before, you're exposed to it, you're being modeled it appropriately, right? And you're seeing all these things, and so it actually does get better. So the differences are greater among the generations than they are among the groups that make those up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's why our crew are so much smarter than we are, because they look at it through another generation's eyes, and that's beneficial. I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned about having to speak differently as a female, but you also mentioned as a person of color. I actually look around and there are more women than there are people of color in this industry. And for me, the women in technology is a very important issue, but diversity is an even bigger issue. And diversity is where you get the most value. If the people that are designing airbags come from lots of different walks of life, lots of ethnicities, lots of social classes, different genders, different sexuality, different religions, and you bring them all together in a product design environment, you get much better solutions and you get much better sales. So it just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's difficult. I mean, again, there's probably some things about growing the pool, of encouraging people to go into these kinds of careers, which, my argument is often, if you're getting down to it, they make more money than a lot of other careers. So, maybe not as much as some, but certainly it's a good way to make a very good income, and it should be encouraged in all varieties of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, good. So is there anything in your assessment that the industry still needs to do? Are we lagging anywhere, failing in some
I
way?
just think continuing to support, especially, the young folks to make sure that they get under wing and they're supported in growing their career, partly to replace all the older people that will be retiring, but also just to make sure that they're happy in these roles and that they continue to work in them.
Julie, stop pointing at me when you say older and retiring. Well, that was just
the
a general
silver
arm
hair,
movement
right?
over there.
Wave her hand was
Yeah, it was nothing personal.
Someone sensitive.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting because I was talking to Eric off camera before this, and I was like, well, we have to find something new to talk about. We have to kind of push this thing forward. The truth of the matter isn't that, and I realize that having talked to you, the truth of the matter is we just need to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
It needs to stay high up on people's agenda. There needs to be constant awareness, and we need to be constantly looking around and
Yeah.
saying, hey, how do we get more women on these booths? How do we get more women in these factories? How do we reflect what that Silicon Valley startup,
Yeah.
I think 90% of that startup are under 30, and the fact that they are 48% female gives me a little bit of comfort
It's
as to
extremely
as to
encouraging.
what's coming
Yes,
in the
it
future
is.
and what's happening, and that kind of feels
You
good.
know, I know we're running out of time, but in preparing for that, I was looking at something that was talking about how the VC money that goes to startups, it's only 7% going to kind of women startups.
Yeah.
But women haven't given up, right? They've kind of had to develop a workaround. So they look at kind of crowdsourcing data then, right? Where a lot of the applicants for that is such a high population that are women who are doing the applicants
Yeah.
for crowdsourcing thing. So they're just saying, okay, well, if this road isn't open to us, we're not giving up on our hope and our dream. We're moving this, and it's unfortunate, but you're developing
It's unfortunate
workarounds.
that there's such a barrier because
Right.
probably some are giving up and they shouldn't. I mean, there are some fantastic ideas out there, I'm
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
and that are getting lost because of that lack of support.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and also men are huge risk takers, so that puts us in the kind of forefront of the VC world. And sometimes, I think a lot of the very successful startups, particularly if you look at Silicon
Yeah.
Valley, have been started by females, and you're seeing more and more of that come through. Almost the majority started by immigrants. It's really interesting as you see those statistics develop.
To Eric's point, though, women have learned to work around
Yeah,
because that's
that's what you do.
what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
But technology is just moving at the speed of light. Not to be punny.
Yeah.
It's amazing at the advances just
Yeah.
in the last year. Since we were, Julie and I get together quite often, but just in the last year, how much, how fast things are moving and the new technology and the new products and
Yeah.
the new things that are coming out.
Yeah, and we have a few CEOs now. We have a few
Yeah, we do.
EMS
Flex has one.
CEOs in the
Yeah.
NX
in
has
the top
NX
20,
has
so
one in
that's
Europe.
great. Let's
Europe
fix
is
that.
probably not as
Let's-
surprising from Europe as
No.
it is here, right?
Yeah,
So
we're
But let's
a little
fix that
stodgy.
president thing.
yeah. Good.
Let's fix that
Julie.
president thing. Julie's up.
No.
Marie,
I like
I think
staying
Marie would make a
technical.
great president.
We'll talk to her.
Have a chat.
Okay, we're starting a campaign here.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you for coming and talking and sharing. And I think Phil's right. Let's keep this conversation going, and hopefully we can continue this at a future show at another platform and do our part. Right.
Sounds great.
Good. So
Okay.
thank you
Right.
both.
Thank
Phil,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.